Hello, I'm Maru. Welcome to my channel. Together, we will embark on an exciting journey full of unexpected twists and vivid emotions. Today, we'll tell you a story where money and power don't always solve everything, and where the most important things in life are far from material. This is a story about how the pursuit of personal interests can lead to a revelation, and how simple moments can result in profound life changes. Be cautious. Its plot will not leave you indifferent. Get ready for amazing discoveries and powerful experiences. Shall we begin? Michael Anderson's world had always been one of precision and unyielding control. A life built on business deals, impeccable order, and carefully maintained appearances. Yet, in the wake of the unforgettable evening at the upscale Manhattan restaurant, everything began to tremble. That night, as Michael stared into the eyes of Anna, the waitress whose every gesture stirred haunting memories of his vanished wife, Sarah, he was besieged by a torrent of conflicting emotions. For 9 long years, he had carried the pain of Sarah's disappearance, and now her ghost had reappeared in the most unanticipated guise. This revelation cracked the facade he'd so meticulously maintained. As Michael wrestled with the shock, he found himself drifting away from the life he had built since Sarah's disappearance, a life that now included his current wife, Laura Anderson. Laura, a graceful and devoted woman with soft eyes and an understanding smile, had stood by Michael through the years, offering a steady presence in a life otherwise marred by loss. Yet, in recent days, Michael's mind had become a battleground between loyalty and yearning. His heart, still tender from the memory of Sarah, pulsed with an ache that he could no longer ignore. Even as he sat at his office table reviewing financial reports and preparing for another high-stakes meeting, his thoughts drifted back to that moment when Anna's eyes had mirrored Sarah's. The past and present blurred together, leaving him tormented by the possibility that the love he once knew might still be alive, if only in fragments hidden behind a carefully constructed mask. That internal turmoil began to cast its shadow over his home life. At dinner that evening, Michael sat across from Laura in their elegantly appointed dining room, but his attention was only half on the conversation. Laura, ever perceptive, sensed the distance in his gaze, the tremor of uncertainty in his voice as he half listened to her recount the details of her day. "Michael, is everything all right?" she gently asked, her tone laced with concern. Michael forced a smile, replying with rehearsed words about business stress and the rigors of his schedule. But beneath his calm veneer, his mind was racing. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's face, soft, yet filled with an inexplicable sorrow, and he felt the magnetic pull of memories that refused to fade. In the following days, Michael's inner conflict deepened. While Laura continued to radiate quiet warmth and steadfast support, Michael found himself increasingly haunted by dreams of Sarah, of a life that might have been if she had not disappeared. His nights were restless. He would lie awake in his study, the only light coming from a small lamp on the mahogany desk, his thoughts swirling as he reviewed old photographs and letters that once belonged to Sarah. Every word, every smile captured in those faded images served as both a balm and a fresh wound. He began to question the foundation of his current marriage. Was his heart truly with Laura, or was it still tethered to the ghost of the woman he lost? The strain soon manifested in subtle, yet unmistakable ways. At morning meetings, Michael's focus wavered. His sharp intellect seemed distracted by an inner dialogue he could neither suppress nor fully understand. Laura, though kind and patient, noticed his increasing preoccupation. One chilly autumn evening, as they sat together on the terrace overlooking the city, Laura reached out and took Michael's hand. "I feel like you're not really here with me lately," she murmured softly. Her eyes searched his face for any sign of reassurance. Michael's gaze faltered, torn between the comforting certainty of Laura's presence and the elusive, burning memory of Sarah. I'm sorry," he managed, though his voice betrayed an unfamiliar tremor. The admission, small as it was, spoke volumes. Michael was beginning to lose himself in the labyrinth of his past. Determined to find some resolution, Michael resolved to pursue the mystery that had been ignited by that fateful encounter with Anna. However, he knew that any steps he took in that direction might further wound his relationship with Laura. Torn between two worlds, the secure, present reality embodied by Laura, and the haunting allure of a lost love, Michael was forced to confront a truth he had long tried to bury. His days became a desperate balancing act. By day, he played the part of the composed, influential businessman, while by night, he grappled with the memories of a love that refused to die. In quiet moments of introspection, Michael recalled the promises he had made to himself and to Laura, promises of fidelity, of building a future based on mutual respect and shared dreams. Yet the specter of Sarah, so vividly resurrected in Anna's eyes, loomed large, threatening to shatter the fragile equilibrium he had constructed. As he paced the length of his penthouse study one night, Michael's mind churned with questions. Could he ever reconcile the love he once knew with the life he now led? Would pursuing the truth about Sarah ultimately destroy what remained of his marriage to Laura? Or was there a path that could lead him to a deeper, more honest understanding of himself and his past? The relentless tug of the past was undeniable, and Michael sensed that the time for indecision was drawing to a close. His heart yearned for closure, for the resolution of the mystery that had haunted him for nearly a decade. And yet, he feared that in chasing the ghost of Sarah, he might lose the present, a present filled with the steady, unspoken care of Laura, who had never wavered in her support. The tension between his longing for what was lost and his duty to the life he had built grew heavier with each passing day, setting the stage for a crisis that would soon demand a final, irrevocable choice. In the days following that haunting night, Michael Anderson found himself tormented by a growing internal maelstrom. The specter of his lost wife, Sarah, relentlessly invaded his thoughts. Determined to uncover the truth behind Anna's identity, he began a quiet yet fervent investigation. Every spare moment was devoted to gathering clues, revisiting old photographs, reading faded letters, and poring over family records in his private study. The once clear path of his meticulously ordered life was now obscured by a labyrinth of memories and unanswered questions. Michael's inner turmoil deepened as he realized that his present life was built on foundations that were beginning to crumble. His current wife, Laura Anderson, had always been his anchor, a warm, steady presence whose gentle understanding had sustained him through years of loss. Yet lately, Laura sensed an ever-widening chasm between them. At home, their conversations turned strained and halting. Laura's eyes, usually so full of quiet compassion, now often searched Michael's face for reassurance that he was still present with her. One cool autumn evening, as they sat together on the terrace overlooking the glittering skyline, Laura reached out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Michael, you seem miles away tonight. What's on your mind?" Michael hesitated, caught between the pull of the past and the weight of his current responsibilities. I don't know," he murmured, his gaze drifting to the dark horizon. Inside, however, his heart was in turmoil. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of Sarah's gentle smile and felt the familiar warmth of her touch, a warmth that now felt like an echo from a life that might have been. The pain of loss and the agony of uncertainty collided within him, forcing him to confront a truth he had long tried to bury. His soul remained entangled in the memory of Sarah, even as he attempted to build a future with Laura. Unable to keep his internal conflict at bay, Michael decided to take bolder steps. He discreetly contacted a trusted private investigator to delve deeper into the background of Anna, the mysterious waitress who had so strikingly resembled his lost love. The investigator's preliminary report was unsettling. Anna's personal records were conspicuously sparse, as if someone had wiped her history clean. No trace of her former identity remained, only a carefully constructed facade that concealed her true past. The notion that someone had deliberately erased Sarah's identity, forcing her into a new life under a false name, filled Michael with a potent mix of fury and despair. Late one night, as Michael sat alone in his expansive penthouse office, the soft hum of the city outside juxtaposed against the turmoil within him, he finally resolved to confront the mystery head-on. With trembling determination, he left behind the familiar comfort of his study and returned to the restaurant under the cover of darkness. Michael chose a secluded table near the service area, his eyes fixed on the doorway through which Anna would appear. Every time she moved among the tables, her posture graceful, yet marked by a subtle sadness, Michael's heart pounded with an almost unbearable intensity. His mind, reeling from the possibility that Sarah might indeed be alive, struggled to reconcile the past with the present. That night, after the restaurant had emptied and the staff had retreated to their quarters, Michael made his move. He approached Anna quietly, careful not to startle her. "Excuse me," he began in a low, measured tone. "May I have a word with you in private?" Anna, visibly startled, met his gaze briefly, before nodding silently and following him into a quiet hallway away from prying eyes. In the dim light of that corridor, Michael's voice softened as he spoke. "There's something about you that I can't ignore. Something that reminds me of someone I lost many years ago." His words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Anna's eyes, reflecting a flicker of something unspoken, searched his face for meaning, yet she offered only a hesitant, "I'm sorry, I don't understand." Michael's heart ached at her response. He leaned in, desperation mingling with hope. "Have you ever felt as if you had lost yourself? As if your past had been taken from you?" The question was fraught with personal longing and pain. For a moment, Anna's expression wavered, as if a distant memory stirred behind her guarded eyes. But then she quickly composed herself, replying in a tone that was professional and distant. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't help you." The brief, measured reply shattered Michael's fragile hope, leaving him with more questions than answers. Returning to his table, he watched her move gracefully among the tables, her every step a silent testament to a mystery he was desperate to solve. The confrontation left Michael even more torn. At home, the strain of his secret investigation and inner conflict began to take its toll on his relationship with Laura. Their once quiet dinners turned into awkward silences, and her gentle inquiries were met with evasive answers. Laura's eyes, filled with concern and confusion, pleaded for his attention, yet Michael's thoughts remained ensnared in the shadow of the past. That night, lying in bed next to her, he could not shake the memory of Sarah's face, the desperate vulnerability in Anna's eyes, a vulnerability that made him question everything he had built. Determined to forge a path to the truth, Michael vowed that he would leave no stone unturned. His search for answers had become a desperate bid to reclaim not only the memory of his lost love, but also a piece of his own identity. In the solitude of his troubled nights, amid the flickering light of the city and the soft murmur of distant voices, Michael resolved that the coming days would be devoted to untangling the web of deception that had stolen Sarah away from him. And yet, amid that burning determination, a quiet dread took root. A dread that the truth might not only shatter the life he knew, but also the delicate balance of love and loyalty he still clung to with Laura. In the days following his initial secretive encounter with Anna, Michael's turmoil reached a boiling point. The inner conflict between his devotion to his current wife, Laura, and the irresistible pull of his lost love, Sarah, grew ever more intense. Every waking hour was haunted by fleeting images of Sarah's smile and by Anna's guarded expressions, a constant reminder of a past that refused to be buried. Determined to break through the wall of indifference, Michael resolved to confront Anna directly once more, to push her until he could extract even the smallest hint of her true identity. One cool, quiet evening, after the restaurant had closed and the echo of footsteps had faded into silence, Michael slipped into a deserted corridor. His heart pounded as he approached Anna, who was methodically tidying up in a narrow back hallway. The soft hum of the air conditioner and the distant murmur of cleaning staff provided a discreet backdrop. With cautious determination, he stepped closer and spoke in a hushed, trembling voice. "Anna, I need to ask you something important. Please, can we talk privately for a moment?" Anna hesitated, her eyes betraying a flash of uncertainty, before she nodded and followed him to a secluded corner away from prying eyes. Under the dim glow of a single overhead light, Michael's gaze bore into hers as he began, "There is something I can't shake, a feeling, a memory. Your eyes, your manner, They remind me so much of someone I lost. My wife, Sarah Anderson, disappeared 9 years ago. I have searched for her every day since. Tell me, have you ever felt as if a part of you is missing, as if your past has been erased?" For a heartbeat, Anna's expression softened, and Michael thought he saw a glimpse of pain flicker behind her eyes. However, before any further words could pass her lips, she drew in a sharp breath. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you mean," she replied, her voice cool and measured. Michael leaned in closer, desperation mingling with hope. "Anna, please. I know this sounds absurd, but I feel an overwhelming connection with you, a connection that echoes with memories of my wife. Can you tell me if you ever remember anything at all about your past?" Her eyes darted away, and for a moment the air between them thickened with silence. "I'm sorry, Michael," she said softly. "I wish I could help, but I don't remember. I have only fragments, hazy impressions, but nothing clear." Her words sent a shockwave through him. Here was the confirmation he had both feared and longed for. His pulse raced as he wondered if the fragments might someday return, if the identity of Sarah could be pieced together from the shards of Anna's lost memories. Before Michael could press further, a sudden noise from the distant dining room startled them both. Anna's composure snapped back into place. I must return to my duties," she murmured, her eyes filled with an unspoken plea for escape. Michael reached out, grasping her hand briefly, as if to hold on to that fleeting moment of vulnerability. "Please, Anna, don't shut me out. I'm not here to hurt you. I only want to know the truth. I want to help you, if I can," he pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. But Anna withdrew her hand and forced a professional smile. "I'm sorry, sir. I really must get back to work," she said, her tone returning to the practiced neutrality that had become her shield. With that, she melted into the shadows of the corridor, leaving Michael clutching his unanswered questions. The brief encounter had only deepened his torment. He was now more convinced than ever that behind the carefully constructed facade lay the lost soul of Sarah Anderson. Back at home, the confrontation left Michael emotionally raw. In the following days, he found himself oscillating between bouts of obsessive investigation and painful introspection. He spent sleepless nights poring over old family photographs and letters, desperately searching for any clue that could bridge the chasm between the woman he once loved and the enigmatic figure of Anna. Meanwhile, Laura, his devoted wife, sensed the distance growing between them. During quiet evenings, when Michael's mind seemed adrift in shadows of the past, Laura's gentle inquiries were met with vague, evasive answers. The strain on their marriage was palpable, and Laura's eyes filled with silent hurt as she wondered where her husband's heart truly lay. Michael knew that to resolve the turmoil, he must unravel the mystery of Anna's identity. Every detail, every fleeting gesture she exhibited at work was scrutinized with painstaking care. His private investigator continued to feed him reports of anomalies, missing records, inconsistent testimonies, and unexplained gaps in her personal history. Each new piece of evidence only intensified Michael's conviction that someone had purposefully stripped away Sarah's past and replaced it with the persona of Anna. And yet, as he confronted these harsh realities, he also felt an overwhelming sadness for the woman who had been forced into a life devoid of her true self. In the sterile quiet of his penthouse office, Michael drafted letters, made phone calls, and plotted his next moves. His resolve was ironclad. He would uncover the truth, even if it meant tearing apart the very foundations of his carefully constructed life. The memory of Sarah, the love they once shared, burned within him like an unquenchable flame, fueling his determination to reclaim not only her identity but also the integrity of his own soul. The confrontation with Anna, brief though it had been, was a catalyst that set him on a collision course with fate. He knew that every step he took from that moment on would be fraught with danger, heartache, and perhaps even betrayal, but he could no longer live in ignorance. With his heart heavy and his mind swirling with questions, Michael prepared himself for the next phase of his journey. He would need to confront those responsible for erasing Sarah's past, and perhaps even challenge his own loyalties and the very essence of his current life. In that dark, restless night, as the city slept beneath a blanket of shimmering lights, Michael made a silent vow. He would find the truth, no matter the cost. And in doing so, he would finally set both Sarah and himself free from the chains of a painful, long-forgotten past. In the wake of that unsettling encounter with Anna, Michael's obsession with the truth intensified. Every waking moment was now dedicated to piecing together the fragments of a past he had thought lost forever. Determined to delve deeper, he expanded his investigation, enlisting the help of a seasoned private detective renowned for uncovering hidden truths. Michael's penthouse office transformed into a makeshift command center, its walls adorned with photographs, old letters, and documents that once belonged to Sarah Anderson. Late into the night, the soft hum of his computer and the rustling of paper accompanied his frantic search for any connection between Anna and the woman he had once loved. The detective's initial report only deepened Michael's suspicions. Anna's records were mysteriously sparse. Her identity, as recorded in official documents, had been scrubbed clean, leaving behind only a carefully constructed new persona. The detective revealed that Anna had first been discovered wandering disoriented in a small town in upstate New York, then admitted to a hospital with no recollection of her past. After her recovery, she reappeared in the workforce under the name Anna, with no trace of Sarah Anderson. Michael's heart pounded with both fury and sorrow. It was as if someone had deliberately erased Sarah's history, casting her into a shadowy existence far from the life she once knew. Haunted by this revelation, Michael began to suspect that the erasure of Sarah's identity was no random misfortune. It was orchestrated. Rumors began to circulate, whispered by those who had once been part of his inner circle, hinting that influential figures, possibly even members of his own family, might have had a vested interest in keeping Sarah's memory buried. One rainy afternoon, Michael received a cryptic phone call from an anonymous source claiming to have information about Sarah's disappearance. The voice, distorted and low, urged him to look closer at those you trust. Though the call left him with more questions than answers, it confirmed his worst fears. The conspiracy might reach into the very heart of his own family. Determined to uncover the full extent of the plot, Michael arranged a secret meeting with one of his longtime confidants, Daniel Carter, a trusted associate with connections in both business and law enforcement. In the quiet, dimly lit back room of an upscale cafe in downtown New York, Daniel revealed that he had heard unsettling whispers during recent family gatherings, rumors that a close relative had been involved in manipulating Sarah's fate. "Michael," Daniel said in a hushed tone, "there's talk that your half-brother, Jason Anderson, has been acting strangely. Some believe he might have played a role in covering up Sarah's disappearance." The words hit Michael like a thunderbolt. The thought that someone from his own blood could be responsible for such a heartless act stirred a bitter cocktail of betrayal and grief within him. Armed with this new lead, Michael intensified his scrutiny of his family's past. He revisited old conversations, combed through archived emails, and even contacted distant relatives in a bid to reconstruct the timeline of events surrounding Sarah's disappearance. Every new detail painted a picture of calculated silence, an intricate web woven by those who wished to keep the truth hidden. Michael's investigation revealed that shortly after Sarah vanished, there were unexplained financial transfers and discreet meetings among several family members. Though none of the evidence was conclusive, the pattern was unmistakable. Someone had orchestrated her erasure to protect certain secrets that Michael's family had long guarded. Haunted by the possibility of such treachery, Michael returned to the restaurant where he had first seen Anna. Late one evening, when the venue was nearly empty and shadows stretched long across the polished floor, he sat at his usual table near the service area and observed her from a distance. Anna moved gracefully among the tables, but now, under Michael's scrutinizing gaze, every gesture and fleeting expression seemed laden with hidden meaning. Her eyes, once distant and practiced, now occasionally flashed with a vulnerability that made Michael's heart ache. Each time she glanced toward him, there was a brief moment, a crack in her facade, that suggested she might be aware, even subconsciously, of who she once was. Back at home, Michael's turmoil began to affect his marriage. Laura Anderson, his current wife, sensed the distance that had grown between them. Their conversations, once filled with shared dreams and gentle humor, had turned terse and distracted. Laura's quiet eyes pleaded for understanding, but Michael's mind was consumed by the relentless pursuit of truth. Late at night, as he lay awake beside her, he would stare at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the past weeks, every whispered conversation, every half-forgotten memory of Sarah, and wondering if the cost of unearthing the truth might shatter the delicate balance of his present life. Despite the mounting pressure, Michael knew that he could no longer allow uncertainty to rule his heart. He scheduled another meeting with his private detective, urging him to dig deeper into the connection between Jason Anderson and the disappearance of Sarah. The detective's new report, delivered in a confidential envelope, contained troubling details: vague financial records, secretive transactions, and a series of communications that hinted at a cover-up. Though the evidence was circumstantial, it confirmed Michael's growing conviction that the conspiracy was real and that it stemmed from within his own family. In the solitude of his penthouse office, Michael sat before a wall covered with photographs of Sarah, images capturing her radiant smile and the love they once shared. He traced the contours of her face with his finger, a silent promise echoing in his mind that he would not rest until he restored her memory and exposed the treachery that had stolen her from him. Every new piece of evidence added urgency to his quest, driving him further down a path fraught with pain, betrayal, and the hope of redemption. With his resolve crystallizing, Michael began planning his next move, a decisive step that would force the conspirators to reveal themselves. He knew that confronting his family would be fraught with danger and emotional turmoil. Yet he also recognized that only by facing the darkness head-on could he hope to reclaim the truth. The shadow of betrayal loomed large over him, but within that darkness, a small ember of determination burned fiercely. As thunder rumbled in the distance and rain lashed the windows of his study, Michael vowed that he would dismantle the intricate web of lies and bring justice not only for himself, but for Sarah, the woman whose light had been stolen from his life. The investigation had evolved from a personal quest into a mission of redemption, and Michael was now willing to risk everything to uncover the truth, even if it meant confronting the deepest, most painful betrayals within his own family. In the weeks following the detective's damning report and his meeting with Daniel, Michael's resolve hardened into a singular purpose: to expose the conspiracy that had stolen Sarah from him. The evidence, though piecemeal, pointed unmistakably toward a deliberate cover-up orchestrated by those closest to him. Michael now knew that the web of deceit was not confined to faceless enemies, but reached into the very heart of his own family. With each new revelation, his anger and sorrow deepened, fueling an almost reckless determination to confront the perpetrators. Late one rainy evening, Michael arranged a clandestine meeting at an upscale private club, a place where influential figures mingled under the guise of business and leisure. There, in a secluded corner draped in shadow, he found himself face to face with Jason Anderson, his half-brother. The air was heavy with tension as Michael's eyes burned with both fury and heartbreak. "Jason," Michael began, his voice low and trembling with restrained emotion, "I know what you've done. You played a part in making Sarah disappear, in erasing her from our lives. How could you betray your own family like this?" Jason's eyes were cold and unreadable, and for a moment, a bitter silence fell between them. Then, with a dismissive sneer, Jason replied, "Michael, you always believed you were the moral compass of this family. Sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good. Sarah's disappearance wasn't personal. It was a necessity to protect secrets that some people would kill to keep hidden." His words, sharp and calculated, cut through Michael like ice. "Protect secrets? At what cost, Jason? You stole her memory. You erased the woman I loved. How can that ever be justified?" The confrontation escalated quickly. Michael's voice grew louder, each word laden with years of accumulated grief and betrayal. I trusted you, Jason. I believed we were brothers, and now I learn that you were complicit in this charade, in turning my wife into a stranger named Anna. Explain to me. Explain how you could allow such cruelty. Jason's lips curled into a bitter smile as he leaned back, his tone almost indifferent. You think you understand everything, Michael, but you're blinded by sentiment. We did what had to be done. There were forces beyond our control, powerful interests that demanded her erasure. I was only following orders. The coldness in his voice was a stark reminder that the betrayal came not from an isolated act of malice, but from a calculated decision by someone who had chosen ambition over family. At that moment, Michael's mind raced back to all the years he had spent searching for Sarah, a search that had led him to this dark, painful truth. His heart pounded as he struggled to reconcile the image of the woman he had loved with the cold, unfeeling man before him. Orders? You mean to say that someone in our family, someone I trusted, gave the order to erase her from my life? Who, Jason? Who could have the nerve to do this? Michael's voice cracked with both anger and sorrow, his eyes pleading for a confession. Jason hesitated, and for a long, excruciating moment, the silence between them was heavy with implication. Then, in a low, almost defeated tone, he said, It was your older cousin, Richard Anderson. He believed that keeping Sarah's memory alive was a threat to our family's legacy. He feared that her return would expose too many secrets. The revelation struck Michael like a thunderbolt. Richard, a man he had once admired for his business acumen, now revealed as the mastermind behind the forced disappearance of the woman he loved. Overwhelmed by a mix of anguish, rage, and profound betrayal, Michael's body trembled. Richard, I trusted him, he whispered, barely able to contain the torrent of emotions that surged within him. I spent years searching for Sarah, praying she was still alive, and now I learn that she was erased, all because of Richard's greed and ambition. His voice rose in a crescendo of pain and determination, echoing off the dark walls of the private club. I will expose every lie, every deceit, until the truth is laid bare for all to see. As the confrontation reached its peak, other club members began to take notice. Jason, sensing that the situation was spiraling out of control, tried to interject with further justifications, but Michael's words drowned him out. Michael's eyes, burning with unspoken promises of retribution, fixed on his half-brother. You may have protected your precious secrets, but you've torn my heart apart. I will not rest until Sarah's memory is restored, until every piece of this treachery is revealed. His voice was resolute, a vow that would not be silenced. After the explosive confrontation, Michael left the club with a mind teeming with questions and a determination that eclipsed his sorrow. The bitter taste of betrayal mingled with the promise of redemption. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril and heartache, but he also recognized that this confrontation was only the beginning. His investigation would now shift focus. He would gather undeniable evidence against Richard Anderson and anyone else complicit in the erasure of Sarah's identity. Back at home, the fallout from the meeting with Jason cast a long shadow over Michael's already strained relationship with his wife, Laura. That night, as Michael lay awake, the echoes of his confrontation reverberated in his thoughts. He was tormented by the realization that the man he had once called family had not only abandoned him, but had actively sought to obliterate the memory of his true love. The revelation of Richard's involvement left him with a profound sense of loss, but also with a burning desire for justice. Michael resolved that he would stop at nothing to reclaim Sarah's memory and to restore the dignity of the woman who had been so cruelly taken from him. With a heavy heart and steely resolve, Michael began to plan his next steps. He would mobilize his resources, lawyers, private investigators, and even trusted allies, to build a case against Richard and dismantle the network of deceit that had haunted him for nearly a decade. Every piece of evidence he collected was a step closer to vindication, a way to honor Sarah's memory and to mend the shattered remnants of his life. And amid this maelstrom of pain and retribution, a fragile hope began to take root. That through the unveiling of truth, he might finally set his heart free from the ghosts of the past. In the aftermath of the explosive confrontation with his half-brother Jason and the damning revelation of Richard Anderson's role, Michael Anderson felt both shattered and resolute. The bitter taste of betrayal still clung to him, but a new fire had ignited, a burning desire to restore the memory of his lost wife, Sarah, and reclaim the truth from the clutches of deceit. With his heart heavy yet determined, Michael knew that his next steps would not only reshape his own destiny, but might also mend the fractured bonds within his family. Returning to his penthouse, Michael locked himself in his study, where photographs, old letters, and cherished mementos of Sarah were scattered across a large oak desk. He spent countless hours poring over every detail, each memory a mixture of joy and pain. The faces in the faded pictures, the gentle curve of her smile, and the warmth in her eyes fueled his determination. He drafted a meticulous plan to dismantle the web of corruption that had orchestrated her erasure, one that involved gathering undeniable evidence, confronting every conspirator, and ultimately bringing Richard Anderson and his cohorts to justice. Michael enlisted the help of a team of trusted lawyers and private investigators, each carefully chosen for their discretion and integrity. Together, they combed through financial records, intercepted secret communications, and interviewed those who had once been privy to the inner workings of his family's affairs. Every new piece of evidence was a tiny victory, a shard of truth that, when pieced together, painted a damning picture of calculated betrayal. The investigative team uncovered covert meetings, unexplained transactions, and even whispered testimonies from long-forgotten relatives, all pointing to a ruthless plan to suppress Sarah's existence. As the case against Richard Anderson grew stronger, Michael found himself facing an unexpected personal transformation. The relentless pursuit of truth forced him to confront not only the treachery of his family, but also the deep wounds that had long festered within him. In moments of quiet introspection, he realized that his life, once built solely on ambition and control, had been irrevocably altered by loss and regret. With each painful discovery, his hardened exterior began to soften, replaced by a raw vulnerability that he had long kept at bay. This inner metamorphosis was not without cost. It strained his already fragile relationship with his current wife, Laura Anderson, who had endured years of emotional neglect. Laura's gentle eyes and unwavering loyalty now stood as a stark contrast to the bitterness that had defined Michael's past one chilly evening. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell